Family, we want to take you back to the turn of the century, to Italy and the United States. In Italy, times were hard and the land cruel and unyielding. So when the people of Italy heard about the promised land on the other side of the ocean, they packed what little they had, left their beloved mountains and roots to begin their dream for a better life in the New World. Not even the hot, sweltering holds of the poor steamers could dampen their hopes and expectations. As they spotted the Statue of Liberty, all their sacrifices, little or no sanitation, weeks of being seasick from the pitching and heaving caused by the turbulent waves rocking the ship, little food and less water, no air, no light, endless days and nights, all faded. Before them, behind the beautiful Statue of Liberty, was the magnificent skyline of their new home, New York City. Not even being herded like so much cattle onto Ellis Island discouraged them. They had hope. But they soon were to discover that this land of the free was not free for everyone. Everyone was equal, but some were more equal than others. They did not know the language, therefore they did not understand Americans, and Americans did not understand them. This was mistaken for ignorance, and they were treated as second-class citizens. In times of crisis, God raises up super saints. On the other side of the ocean, God was raising up a powerful woman in the church whom he would use to aid her countrymen struggling to belong in this new land of hope. Family, we begin our story of St. Francis Xavier Cabrini in Sant'Angelo Lodigiano in Italy, in the Lombardia area of Italy. She was born here on July 15th, 1850, and on the day that she was born, her father was in the courtyard trying to shoo away all of these doves, white doves that flocked all over their backyard. And he couldn't get them to leave. He didn't quite understand why they were here, but later on he realized that the Lord had sent them because he had a very special daughter that was born on that day.
Now, they had never seen doves here. Pigeons, yes, but doves, no. So right from the very beginning, she was to bring peace to people who were just devastated, all hope taken away from them, a helpless people in a land that had promised them hope. So it was very symbolic of the work that our Mother Cabrini would do. Now,
Francis, she was called Chiacchino. Chiacchino means Chiacchina means little chatterbox. She was called Chiacchina. She lived here most of her life. Her sister Rosa taught her everything she knew. Rosa was a school teacher, and so because of that, Francesca wanted to become a school teacher as well, and this is how she began what was to become a great career, helping people.
It gave her her foundation. She learned to love children very much, and so she had a mother's heart. Her sister Rosa gave her this mother's heart because she was such a strong influence on her life.
Now, she wanted to be a nun. She, after she had received First Holy Communion, I think the year after?
At 9 years old, she was given special dispensation to receive Holy Communion. Because, in those days, you had to be 12. But she was so brilliant. Rosa had prepared her so well, spiritually and intellectually, to receive our Lord Jesus, that she had special dispensation. So at 9, she received our Lord for the first time.
2 years after, at age 11, she asked her parish priest if she could take a perpetual vow of virginity. And he, being a wise man, allowed her to take 1 year vow. And at the end of that year, he would allow her to renew it for another year. But at the end of that first year, when Francesca renewed her vow, she renewed it perpetually for the rest of her life.
Francesca had a hunger to go to China as a missionary, but her parents sent her to a convent school where she remained until at 18 she earned her teaching credentials and began teaching. The children loved her. When smallpox hit the village, Francesca and her sister worked day and night helping the victims of the epidemic. She contracted smallpox but was spared the scars. When she recovered, she was sent to another small village to take the place of a teacher who had fallen ill. It was there she met Father Antonio Cerati, who became a lifelong friend and advisor. Father Cerati was transferred to the small village of Codogno, where an orphanage was being poorly handled. He asked Francesca to come and work in the orphanage.
Francesca walked into a situation filled with intrigues and infighting. The woman who financed the orphanage made herself head of it and was causing problems, the reason Francesca was asked to come in the first place. On the Feast of the Triumph of the Cross, September the 14th, 1877, she took her vows as a religious and was officially put in charge of the orphanage. The woman formerly in charge became unglued. Francesca's problems multiplied. The bishop finally closed the orphanage. Through the trials she endured in the orphanage, she gained the strength she would need to walk through other trials in her life. After the bishop closed the orphanage, he sat Francesca down and said to Mother, "You know, we don't have a community similar to what you're looking for. So why don't you start your own community?"
And so she started right here in Codogno, the first mission. They were with 6 other sisters. There were 7 sisters all together, and they started the mission of the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Now he said to them, "Go and look for a house, or I have a house that might be suitable for you." And he told her where it was, and it was too opulent for Mother. And she said, "No, we have an idea where we would like to go." And she came to this place, this abandoned Franciscan convent, which was in terrible, terrible shape, terrible
Need of
disrepair.
much love.
Took a tremendous amount of love and work on the part of those 7 sisters to put this into any kind of shape. But she was the kind of person who could do it, and she did it. And this became the mother house of the community. And from here, everything stemmed until they finally went to Rome.
You know, even though she founded a house every year, ogni anno,
nuova casa.
See? This was always home to her.
This was headquarters.
So whenever she went anywhere, she went to the United States, she came back, she stayed here. This was her home.
She'd stop off in Rome because that was where the action was, but then she would come here because this is where she lived. This is where she could be comfortable with her sisters. And finally, after having worked for a few years, and the bishop would ask her to start an orphanage here, start a school there, and she would start them in the immediate area of Lombardy, which is where this is. Finally, she felt it was time to go to Rome and get official recognition from the Vatican, start a house in the Rome. That was very important to her. And so she went to Rome, and a cardinal greeted her and another sister and said, "Well, where's your money?" And she said, "We have no money." "Oh, okay, you don't stand a chance. You're never going to get anything happening here in Rome unless you can finance it. But stay here for a few weeks. I'm going on a trip, and when I come back, we'll talk again." So they prayed for 2 weeks, and the cardinal came back, and apparently he had gotten the ear of the Pope, and he said, "Not only are you going to open 1 orphanage here in Rome, you're going to open 2. So they opened, and when they would open an orphanage, they would open a house. So they opened 2 houses and 2 orphanages in Rome, and from that, the mother house started in Rome, where it is till today. You know, she was one of the most powerful women in the United States, in New York, at the turn of the century. And we need people like that, but we've got to know more about Mother Cabrini's so that we can show our young people, this is what you want to fashion your life after, this lady, not the other people that you're doing.
And you know, if you've been refused at one convent or one community, be like Mother Cabrini. Keep trying.
And as St. Francis said.
And if you can't go in the front door, you go in the back window. If you have a calling, then persevere.
Pursue your calling. The Lord will make it. He may want you to suffer in order to achieve what you're looking for. He may want that for you so that you never, ever take it for granted. We don't want anybody to take anything that the Lord has given us, especially in our church, for granted.
Mother Cabrini was a strong woman, and the women we've met here today are strong women. We need you, strong women, to help bring our church gloriously, triumphantly into the 3rd millennium.
On the other side of the world, in the United States, Italian immigrants were being taken advantage of by unscrupulous employers and landlords. God raised up a hero for these immigrants, Bishop Scalabrini of the Diocese of Piacenza, Italy. He committed himself to helping the plight of those who had gone overseas in the hope of a better life, only to find that their life had become a living hell. He founded an order of missionaries, but the need far exceeded the help. Mother Cabrini and her sisters were just what was needed to help ease the explosive situation mushrooming across the ocean.
The bishop asked Mother Cabrini to open a convent in New York, but as much as she sympathized with her countrymen's plight, her eyes were on the Far East. She rejected his proposal, gently but firmly, and never gave his proposition another thought. However, while she forgot about it, Bishop Scalabrini did not. The problem was escalating, and so was his urgency to turn it around. At the same time, Archbishop Corrigan of New York was feeling pressure from the Vatican to resolve the problems of the Italian immigrants.
An Italian countess offered Archbishop Corrigan a home and financing for an orphanage for homeless Italian girls. At the request of Bishop Scalabrini, he invited Mother Cabrini and her community to come to New York and open the orphanage. Reluctant to say yes, she turned to the Holy Father. Now, the Pope, aware of the problems in New York, had been praying someone would step forward to alleviate the suffering of his flock in the New World.
His Holiness listened respectfully to Mother Cabrini as she shared how she really wanted to go to the missions in China. Our great Leo XIII smiled as he said, "You must not go to the East, but to the West. Your mission will be in America to help the Italians and to make your country loved." True to her vow of obedience, she accepted the Holy Father's mandate as the final word and never mentioned the Orient again. She left for Caledonia, where she prepared the sisters to carry on without her for a while. Then she set out armed with letters from important personages in the Vatican, especially the one from His Holiness.
Coming over in the hold of the ship, and it was a terrible experience for all those people who came over from Italy to the United States. But it did have, in Mother Cabrini's case, there was some humor to it. It was dark humor, maybe Irish humor. When they came over, she had been deathly afraid of going into the water because she had had an experience as a child where she fell into the water, and from that time on was very afraid of the water.
She would pick the wild violets, make paper boats, and she would lean over and put them in the water. And she thought, as an infant, as a child, as a toddler, and a little older, that these boats with the violets were her missionaries, and the little paper boats were going to China. Oh, well, wow. It was one day that she was leaning over a little too far that she was cast into it's very rapid moving stream. I've seen it, and it just gushes past. And she was almost drowned at that time. So she developed more than just a fear of water. She was terrified of the water, and yet crossed the ocean 23 times.
I have to tell you also something. Was saying that when she arrived, the Scalabrini priests brought them somewhere to eat. They ate, and then she asked where her convent was and found out there was no convent. And so she and the sisters with the Scalabrini priests went from boarding house to boarding house, trying to find a place that would be quasi-suitable and that they could afford. And the one that they landed in seemed all right until the other members who were going to occupy, had already occupied their bedrooms, stayed hidden until the lights went out.
Brother Ant and Brother Mouse.
And then they scurried out. And so here you just envision these sisters sleeping on chairs, their feet up, and Mother Cabrini, the mommy, just watching to make sure that they didn't hurt her sisters.
When she arrived, the Archbishop of New York, had sent her a letter not to come, that everything had fallen through, and she hadn't received it, and she got to his office, and he said, "What are you doing here? I sent you a letter not to come." oh, well, you can catch the same boat that you came in on to take you back. And the nuns that were with Mother almost died for the thought of having to go back on that boat again.
But she was strong.
Yeah.
And she said, the Pope sent me here, and I will not leave.
I have a mission, and I will carry out the mission that I've been given. Now, she also had all her dots dotted and all her T's
I's dotted.
I's dotted and T's crossed, because she had letters from the Pope, from cardinals, from bishops in Rome, and the Archbishop of New York could do nothing but back down and help her get started in New York City.
Mother Cabrini was only in New York City 2 days, and she went to the parish of St. Joachim, where the Scalabrini fathers had just arrived the year before, and it was the girls from the candy factories that came and helped her take care of these hundreds of children who hadn't had much discipline at all. Many of them were not in school, and they helped her settle them down so that she could teach religion to them. And so the children and the older people, some of them whom had not been to church in 20, 30, 40 years, depending upon how long they'd been in the United States, were just drawn to this woman who helped to lead them to God.
So that she led the children and the children led the parents.
Exactly. That's why the schools were opened.
Wasn't there also a situation where the young girls were on the streets? Many of their parents couldn't care for them, couldn't take care of them, and some very unscrupulous people started to use these young girls, and she gathered them up and brought them into a home and took care of them, fed their souls, their bodies, and she taught. Now, she also taught the Italians. She was very much like Junipero Serra, who did not just hand people a fish. He taught them how to fish. As St. Paul tells us, she was that way too.
Yes, very much so. For example, you know, when you say these young girls, there were state institutions, but the practice at the time was at 14 years of age, the girl would be left on her own. So Mother Cabrini went counter to this, even though she didn't get any money for it except the pennies, nickels, and dimes collecting. And she would not, she would keep the girls until they were 18 years of age. They had some foundation in education, and also could do embroidery, could repair some of the lace lingerie of the well-to-do Italians, so that they would be able to earn a livelihood once they left her home.
Praise God.
When she asked Pope Leo XIII, he said, a sister said, "You're China. It's in America. You're to go there and make your country, you go there, help your brothers and sisters, and make your country loved, known and loved." And that she did. I really believe that people like my father and others of our ancestors that came here were shown by this lady, this strong lady, that they could be something important and viable in this country. And so they suffered, they took any job they could. I remember seeing my grandmother pulling the threads at home, because she was crippled, and also because she had to take care of me. I saw the poverty of the people, but every one of them worked. And my mother from the time she was a very young girl, worked in the factories, and it was, what did they call it, a sweatshop. They worked in the sweatshops.
I'm not sure where we saw this. I'm not sure if it was at the Cabrini Center or, not exactly sure, but the statement was, we were given to believe that New York the streets were lined with gold. When we got to New York, we found out the streets not only were not lined with gold, but there were no streets. And they wanted us to build the streets. And there may have been a little resentment to that, but this is what it was for all immigrants, all people who came over. We all became a part of building this country. And so when Mother Cabrini came over, she gave these dear people a means to be a part of building this country. She also was considered the real estate lady in New York. After she got here and she started building orphanages, anytime anybody had something they thought she could use, they would contact her, and that's how she got West Park on the Hudson River. the Jesuits contacted her and said, we have this piece of property which would probably be great for you. Family, we're here at West Park in upstate New York on the Hudson. This was the original convent in the United States of Mother Cabrini. And we're here with Sister Regina Patterson and Sister Lena, and we're standing in front of a wagon, a carriage, that was here during the life of Mother Cabrini.
But just picture her going all over the United States with something like this. Is that what she used, Mother?
The first trip that they took to Nicaragua took 10 days, I think, to get there. Today it would take about, from Miami, it would take about 3.5 hours. So her traveling, and she traveled all over the world. Yeah. And you got to remember that the traveling she did was what we would consider extremely primitive. And yet she went to all these places. Praise God.
I just said at one point she went over the Andes on muleback, because although she was petrified of water, she would cross the water because she felt that the Lord was calling her to the other side.
We're standing here with Sister Regina Peterson in front of an original building that was here when the Jesuits offered the land to Mother Cabrini over 100 years ago. So the building in back of us is over 100 years old. And so while she was in Italy, the Jesuits contacted her for the pasta. This was called Manresa at the time, I believe, which is after St. Ignatius of Loyola. And they contacted Mother about purchasing this property up here on the Hudson. It's beautiful, beautiful property.
So you can just picture her speeding as quickly as she could across the ocean and then to this spot.
Now, when Mother Cabrini got here, the Jesuits had not told her this in advance, but when she got here and looked at this magnificent, beautiful property, she said, this is it. This is what we need for the orphanage for the girls. And then they dropped the bomb. Well, there's only one problem, is there is no water here. Right now, we go down to the Hudson River to draw water from it, but it's not good water. Mother Cabrini said, no problem, the Lord will take care of it. And so she bought the property. And I probably would have been out of my mind with fear that it was not going to work. Can we dig a well? How many gallons a minute can we get from the well? We need all this water for these young people. Instead, she got all her sisters together with shovels and said, okay, let's dig. And they all went.
First they prayed.
Oh, of course they prayed.
Not of course they prayed. That's something that we forget, especially me. You know, I'm the Martha and I forget to be the Mary. Now, make no mistake about it. Mother Cabrini was as much Mary as she was Martha. So she got
maybe
them all
it was
together.
60-40.
Yeah, and 60-40, I would say, would be
Prayer.
Mary 60. She was a woman of prayer and faith.
One of Mother Cabrini's greatest accomplishments was the Columbus Hospital in New York, which began in 1892 on the 4th centenary of Christopher Columbus. When the Italian community of nuns who had been running a small hospital returned to Italy, Bishop Scalabrini offered it to Mother Cabrini. She wasn't sure she should take it as there were financial irregularities.
She had a dream, and in this dream, she remembers the Blessed Mother is kneeling, or is leaning over a cot in a hospital, and her sleeves are all rolled up, her dress is pinned, and Francesca says to her, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm doing what you don't want to do." And so that's how Mother Cabrini got converted to healthcare and opened so many hospitals, nursing schools, dispensaries, clinics throughout the United States, Latin America, and our sisters continue today on several continents.
But with this first hospital, Mother Cabrini had reason to go forward with great caution. The owners of the hospital were not very reputable. Her suspicions were well-founded. Within a few months, the administrators tried to make Mother Cabrini pay for the expenses of the hospital. She said she would, on condition she take full charge of the hospital. She was shown the door. The Lord saved the day at the 11th hour. Mother was able to purchase 2 buildings, which she turned into a hospital, and although smaller than the other hospital, she was able to place the patients there. The facilities were meager, But it was a beginning, and from this beginning grew the Columbus Hospital, now called Mother Cabrini Medical Center.
On December the 22nd, 1917, Mother Cabrini died at the convent in Chicago. Her body lay in state there for a time and then was brought to the high school in Fort Tryon Park, where it laid in state for a while, and then was brought here to West Park. She had always expressed a desire to be buried here at the convent in West Park. And she was kept there until 1933, when the cause for her beatification was taking off, and they wanted the body back in Fort Tryon Park, and so she was brought back to the chapel, which had been built at the high school in Fort Tryon Park, which is today the library.
What we need in this world is dedication, and we need strength. When we wrote about the martyrs, we wrote with the prayer that you would understand the price that was paid for this church, and you would defend her and fight for her. Now, when we bring you Mother Cabrini, we ask you once again, did she do it for nothing? Was it all wasted? Remember what Mother Cabrini came to do in the United States and then into the world. And you pick up that torch that was lit by her and carry it.
We had a Mother Cabrini, we had a Mother Teresa, we have a Mother Angelica. We need more mothers to help save our church and our world.
And so you brides of Christ, remember why you became nuns and get about the business of serving your spouse, our Lord Jesus. We love you.
God bless you. Thank you, Father.
Grazie tanto.
Write us at the address on our screen or call us in the United States at 1-800-633-2484.
We love you.